Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast, interview your ideal clients, and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host today, Sean Blackburn. Today is a continuation of yesterday's episode with Adam Vasquez, the founder and CEO of Merit. Today, Adam's going to be unpacking his 4-part framework on market invention. It's the subject of his upcoming book, Toothfish, The Origin of Markets. And without further ado, let's jump straight in. You know, in the book, you kind of outline the process, obviously, and you've kind of broken it into 4 stages. Maybe if you can kind of walk us through what you see as the stages of market invention.
Yeah, so we really examined and tried to bring them up to, so there was little to no overlap through the different stages, right? And we were trying to make sure that, so not only from our own experiences as market inventors ourselves and all the engagements we've done and all the markets we've kind of invented, we also looked outside, like the Salesforce.com model, the HubSpot, Boston Beer Company, Nike did this as well. And even earlier, like the beers inventing the engagement ring market to sell diamonds. Right? Because there wasn't diamond engagement rings prior to them, and they got everyone to believe that this was a thing, and they did. So it is the same process they did. They just didn't have the internet back then. It's really remarkable. So, So we broke it down, and there's four distinct stages. And again, this isn't Merit's like proprietary process. When I say it's like the process, it is the process everybody follows. So that's why it's like a discovery that everyone should share. It's not like some proprietary secret thing that only Merit does, right? Right now, we're the only company that does it. But again, I want this to grow in a market. We get bigger with it, but then more people help each other. So market opportunity is where you start. And that really comes down to a lot of research. But how you do research is very different than traditional research. All we're trying to do is uncover pain that nobody else is solving, and then size it and see if this is an actual legitimate market, or if it's something that's not attainable, right? It's not worth it. It's really not a thing, because sometimes there's pain, but nobody really cares, right? And then once you really uncover that, and you're looking at influencers, industry experts, you're looking at your competitors, you're interviewing prospective customers or current customers, you're looking at your own strengths, you're looking at mega trends, because mega trends are important because you want to align. Those are about timing, right? One of the reasons why market invention, our own process, is taking off so well right now is because some of the mega trends. Think about what's going on. Everybody's freaked out about the Amazon effect. They're freaked out about the speed of change happening. They're freaked out about, the internet and how it's impacting in storefronts, small businesses going out. There's a lot of turmoil and change inside all of these industries. Then once you figure that out and you're like, oh, these are some of the opportunities I believe that we could do. And say and this works for you, like you're a startup entrepreneur saying, I have a hypothesis. Then you go through this process and it either validates your hypothesis or it totally destroys it. Either way, you're in better shape. Or if you're, say, a large established B2B business, say, or mid-size, it doesn't matter. You can be regional, you can be global. You're saying like, okay, my competitors got number one, or they're on our heels, or like, what's the next revenue source? How can I create this market? This starts to identify where that opportunity is, right? And it's pretty straightforward. But how you execute it is different. And so once you have that, you basically get together as a team and you kind of force it to say, okay, what are the things we can do? And you look at the ecosystem, and that's when we move into the second stage, which is the invention strategy. And the invention strategy it has a little bit of go-to-market in it, right?
Right.
It has a lot about the language you use. So you got to think about your language you're using, because right now, if you're not your leader in your market, down to the word and how you describe yourself and what your company does is the leader's words. Because at one point, someone invented this market and they had to come up with a terminology. And it was the group that decided on this, right?
Interesting.
And if you're using their words, and this is why people are like, oh, we got to reposition, we got to use language. None of that helps you because you're still saying and sounding like everybody else. So no rebranding helps you, So you got to change your language in conversation because it is a new market.
Right.
And so you really have to walk them through. So that's part of it. Your market statements you build. So and the cool thing about invention strategy, like people are like, oh, brand strategy is what we need to do. No, this is where people really get tied up. We're inventing a market. We're branding that market. And we happen to be the only provider of that market. So we're selling the idea of a market, this new market, not the idea of your company or product. People, once they buy into the market, in the idea of what it is and how it's becoming, they will just naturally buy from you because obviously you're the only one providing that service.
Right.
And so you really got to think about your invention strategy. What's the whole ecosystem look like? So a little bit of business development in there too. And, there's a lot of, like I said, using, what we've known in our skill set, in our toolbox, but using it in a different way and looking at it differently is really important. So got to have a real strong point of view. You size the market, you got to size it, which is a lot like strategy. And you might even say you're an established business and you don't have time to invent the market. This is the best way to identify mergers and acquisition targets too. Because you might identify this and be like, oh my gosh, there's this opportunity I want to do. Wait, there's like 3 companies in there and this is the leader, but you're early enough where you can invest in them or even buy them outright. And then you can kind of, you don't have to build it, you can buy it. So right. That can it works really well in the M&A process too. So once you do that, and again, we're also conceptualizing the market here. So I like it to the show Fixer Upper. So if you ever watch that,
yes, too much. Yeah.
I think everybody kind of has. So once they sit you down, remember when they say, this is what the house could look like. We're going to take this rundown house and look like this. So the conceptualization happens in the invention strategy too. So what is it going to look like? So what is the sort of creative even it's going to look like? So how are we going to take it to market? So you get a real good concept of what it's going to look like so that when we move to the third phase, which is make the market, we're ready to do the work and actually build it. And the third is the make the market phase. And it has those sales, it has some marketing, it has some business development, it has some network, it has a little bit of everything, right? But the difference is the approach. The key thing here is it's about educating the market. And it's about creating a conversation with industry experts, other influencers, as well as yourself, talking about this new trend that is coming out, similar to the conversation we're having right now, right?
Right.
And what happens is if you really, really solve this new market, has really done it, has solved the pain that everybody's kind of talking about or not talking about, and generally people are not talking about it, then you create this whole new approach, and then you become the next big sort of market trend or mega trend in your industry, right? And what happens with that, then once you're successful in that, customers start flooding from the old market. You're using market statements you got to define the old market and label it so that customers in that old market or people that are looking and buying in that old market who don't want those things, right? You give them some sound bites. And then you've got to label and name your new market. So naming your new market is very important. And it's not about, it can't be marketing or jargony. Like I think inbound marketing is about as jargony as you can get away with,
right.
but it can be a mixed thing. So it's really important that your invention strategy and when you're making the market, once you uncover, it's a combination of these. So you and I were talking before, being on the podcast, right, it's bigger than, say, a category, because a category is a thing. A market is a bigger thing. And when you're inventing a market, You may not have to design a new category. It may be positioning. Like you already have it. You're just selling it in the wrong market, right? It could be a digital like play, that part of it, but it's generally a combination, and it always does have some branding and positioning in it, and it always generally has some sort of category or product involved. It could be a service too. It can be all these things or none of those things. That's the thing I want everyone to get. But the cool thing about this process is it's not like, hey, what happens today? We kind of get in a room and we're like, hey, this is what our competitors are doing. What are we going to do? It's just kind of throwing stuff up. This forces the process so that, if you trust the process, you're going to come out on the other end with something that it does actually have market and will generate traction and revenue for you. And the bigger you think about the market, which I always challenge everyone to think bigger than they always started originally, the market you're vending, the bigger you get, the bigger the opportunity comes. Like the cloud-based CRM market is, tens of billions of dollars a market, and Salesforce.com owns the majority.
Right.
So you're thinking about that, and it works every time. So then when you're in the make the market, you're educating. When you switch to the fourth phase, we call it the iterate and expand, is when you start to have competitors kind of bleed into your market, right? They start coming in. And maybe the market leader from the legacy market hasn't kind of woken up yet, but once they wake up, they start coming into your market, right? And they start to invade it. And what happens is you have to recognize when that happens, because you no longer need to educate people why this pain exists and why this market exists and needs to solve, right? Because at that point, people are kind of broadly understand it exists and they're looking for it. Instead, what you need to do is reinforce you need two things. You need to reinforce and not educate, but defend the market, your position as the leader and why you're the best and why you solve the pain better than anyone else. Plus, you need to, again, in many ways, restart the market invention process to always be ahead to the next market. It's a continuous thing, right? That's what things are doing. So, and I'll give you an example of LifeLock, right? So LifeLock's a great example. I'm sure you're familiar with LifeLock, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So it's a personal, for those who don't know, they're a personal privacy data protection company, right? Insurance company. And they started, decades ago when cybersecurity and data breaches were just like a new thing and like was not generally aware other than people that were cybersecurity experts, right? So to start it, they used to do all day infomercials to educate you on why you need data protection and the thing that's lurking around the corner and all this stuff. And it worked because they were in the make the market phase. They were inventing this data security and protection market, right? So fast forward to today, we hear data breaches all the time. It's almost on a weekly basis. We're all very aware that we need to do something to protect ourselves. So, and now Experian is coming in and saying we're the best in data protection and data security, and LifeLock is still doing all day infomercials at the time for us having this conversation. So LifeLock doesn't even know where they are in the process, and now they're at risk of losing their leadership position because Experian's going to take the high ground. And so, like, some people always say, like, oh, well, this is like first mover advantage. Like, just because you're the first, the inventor of the market, it does not guarantee you will remain the leader if you don't know what you're doing and how to maintain that leadership position. And that's why there's that fourth distinct phase, because this also gets deeper than, say, advertising. We're talking about business process, customer service, leadership changes, team development. You need to make sure your business is going to scale rapidly with the market as it scales. And you need to make sure you don't break or buckle under that scale. So you need to change systems and everything else as you're scaling. That's why that's the kind of iterate and expand phase of it. So it's not just defending yourself, but it's also improving yourself and putting systems in place so you can expand. And
Absolutely.
those are the four distinct phases.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the fourth one, why do the other three if you're not going to do the fourth? Why not gain all the value that you put your work into? So that makes a lot of sense. And I can't wait to grab the book and look through this more. But say I'm someone in our audience and we're number 2 or we're number 3, where would you start if you were, say, a salesperson or a marketing, leader within an organization? with the idea of market invention, what would be a jumping off point in your mind?
The first jumping off part is understanding what your strengths are as a team, as an individual and as a team. It could be, we've got a great network. We have a strong manufacturing footprint. We've got a great digital experience. We've got a great customer experience. It could be all those, or it could be some of those. It could be some things we're not even thinking of on the call. And those are generic. That's where I start. And then second, you move right into talking to customers who are, if you have a hypothesis on what maybe market it could be or some things, talking to customers and we're talking like 30 or so customers, and asking them what they're not getting. What do they hate the most about, say, working with you or working with your competitor? And it's not about, you can ask them what they love working about with you, and that can, inform your strengths, like
Sure.
mission, trying to uncover your strengths. But you really want to focus on what they're not getting. And so it's really uncovering and observing them, if, say, watching them, how they do things. Like if you've got a type of product or service and you're trying to observe them, maybe it's a factory equipment, maybe observing how, going into one of your customers' factories and seeing how they use the tool that you manufacture. Or what you could do is just, well, I'd say not or, but and what you do is you can also ask them saying, hey, what do you hate most about working and doing this?
Right.
And because we're really trying to uncover the thing that nobody's addressing. And then what you do is you basically, we call it a customer pain grid, which, by the way, all these templates and everything are going to be available to everyone who not only buys the book, but there's also a whole on-demand interactive training program that we're gonna offer for people as well outside the organization that we've used ourselves.
Very cool.
So we really kind of, we're not giving it away. We're gonna, make people pay for it. But the reason why we're even making people pay for it is because people don't tend to take free advice, do anything with free advice. So, we make people invest in it so they feel like they need to do it. So those are the two things that I would do. I mean, obviously, if you're really trying to learn market invention, now that we have the training available and the book Toothfish, pick up a copy of the book, immerse yourself, at least understand what's going on. You can argue with it all you want, but you can't argue with the results and the fact that it exists. And then if you really want to go deeper, you sign up for the virtual training in your team so you know the process. And then there's the templates and everything else you follow. But that if you're not looking at the book, or you're just taking, from this conversation we have, start with your strengths and just start talking to people that you want to sell to or who are already buying from you to uncover what pain is not being addressed. And it sounds simple, but nobody really does this.
Right. It sounds simple in some ways, but there are some people who don't embrace this. And you mentioned that in some of your talking points. Why do you think that is, that some people hear all of these things defined and decide not to go down this path of market invention?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons. First, they think it's too big of an initiative. Like, oh my gosh, this is going to have to change everything. I've got to change my entire business model and all this stuff. Sometimes, yes. If you're really going big and you really you realize that you need to make a fundamental shift in the whole industry, yes, those are like the Jeff Bezos plays. Those are like
Sure.
the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Mark Benioff from Salesforce.com. Those are all those big plays, and that will make you number one every time. Or you can do like some of these larger clients and saying, we're number one overall, but we serve multiple industries. I want to use this process for just new product development. I want to use this process for just a new tertiary market that I want to just generate new revenue that I think is an emerging market, but like it doesn't need this big investment. So a lot of people get hung up on the fact that they think it needs to be this huge, massive undertaking for their company, when in fact it might just open up a new line of service or a new opportunity they just don't see, that they're leaving money on the table or, value or something else. And that thing at least helps them with more cash flow. It helps them with, something else, but they become number one in that new market regardless. And then that helps them become number one overall, but it doesn't become this major investment.
Right.
The other thing I found, other than the big versus small type of thing, is similar. Some people just don't get it, right? And that's fine. And those are generally individuals that tends to be scarcity mindset and a little bit small thinkers because they're a little bit afraid of their own shadows, and that's okay. Or they're tied so ingrained in the legacy market thinking that shifting to this new market would mean that they have to throw out what their old belief systems and their own personal brand that they've put on there. It's almost like admitting that I was wrong. This is what we need to do, So those are the two hangups. But the individuals that do embrace this, first, are really fun to work with from a merit perspective, and then from my own personal coaching perspective. But they're doing big things, and they are not cash strapped. They got big margins. They've got no competition. When somebody gives them an objection, it's not, they can easily overcome an objection, So if you think about this as a salesperson, for us, think about it in the agency space for all those agency owners that may be listening to us, or marketers, how many times have you heard that, oh, we've already got an agency? Well, it's the same thing for accounting firms or law firms or, established industries. They've already got one. And,
right.
And we get that objection ourselves. And I'm like, well, that's great. Because first, we're not in another agency. And second, no one needs another agency. And let me explain why. And then once you explain to it, either they get it or they don't. But then you qualify them right away, and that they're in your camp. And if you know they're in your camp and they've got the budget and everything else, you win like 80, 90% of the time. And it saves you from doing a lengthy open RFP process too. So it changes the whole thing. And so like if you're a salesperson, it's like in the assurance software space, in the claims management space, we had a client, we have a client that was the same in their B2B software sales, right? Everybody has one, right? They already have claims management systems in place. And before that, the sales team were like, well, they're just not buying us because we're just not good enough or a better alternative, or we're the same. And that's generally speaking all the same, right? The switching costs are too high. So then what is your alternative? Advertising and more lead gen ain't going to help you because your conversion is going to stink, right? But hiring more salespeople isn't going to help you because everybody's already got a solution. So you have no choice really to sell a different solution to new problems, but also helps with the existing problems that the legacy market helps. The only way. And price, and by the way, price is never a winning value prop, right? Selling on price. So, and there's always going to be someone cheaper. And especially as we're going into a global market now, which we are in, you're competing, especially agencies. There's like, if you're a lead gen agency or, you're competing with companies out of India, you're competing with companies out of Romania, you're competing with companies, in China. It's like, and they are 100 times cheaper and probably just as good service. And even if you say you're a better service or you all sound the same, so everyone says it's the same stuff. So it doesn't matter. And it's more than positioning, right?
It's fascinating stuff, Adam. I really think that this is going to be an awesome book for people to pick up. And I appreciate you sharing with our audience today your perspective and your process on market invention. Tell us a little bit about the book and where people can grab it.
The book's called Toothfish, Origin of Markets. And the origin of markets, kind of a nod to the origin of species, a little bit of Darwinism here. And it's a book that explains kind of like a conversation we just had of what's really going on. And then unlike other books that are more like business theory, this is a how-to guide on how to get there. So there's templates and it's very conversational. It is like having a conversation with me. Whether you like it or not, it is try to make it very conversational. And, there's some case studies in there, but they're all based on real world experiences and facts that we know work every time. And it's going to be available. It is available on Amazon and as well as, Barnes & Noble, as any other places. And you can find the book on, madewithmerit.com, but also Adam T as in Thomas Vasquez.com as well, where you can buy the book directly or also even sign up and get the training, because I'm really excited about the training. It's interactive, it's on demand. It's like having me in your pocket as a little market invention Sherpa in your pocket, right? So It allows me to go deeper with extra templates and new case studies. It's over more than 40 interactive chapters, hours of training and time to do that. So you can sign up for that too. So it's just, I want to help people. And I knew, I got to follow my own process. It's not mine, but it's the process about educating the market and what we're doing here. And I'm not going to lie to say that it's not part of the process of inventing market invention, but I hope everyone realizes that this is a reality. This is real. And I just am using the process to get everyone to understand market invention actually exists. And it is a real law of commerce that is impacting all of us, because I believe there's plenty of money and customers and clients and opportunities for everyone. I am not a scarcity mindset person. I'm an abundance mindset. And I have no problem with helping other people and sharing this, because I think this can help more people than hold them back. So that's my ultimate goal here, is just to help all these businesses that are struggling right now. And even if they're not struggling, they're faced with this constant change. And this is the formula that really helps you overcome this new constant change and rapid model of just everything's changing, it seems like, and the stress that comes along with that. So I'm hoping this will help you through that and really give you a sort of step-by-step guide how to do it and entertain you in the way, but also help you personally and professionally, because it's a little bit of personal performance too.
Yeah, definitely excited to share it with our audience. So for our regular B2B Growth listeners, on our website, b2bgrowthshow.com, in the show notes, we will definitely have this listed, but certainly take a look at it on Amazon. And Adam, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate your perspective on market invention.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Sean. It's a pleasure catching up on this. And I hope to be back on and talking about this in the future with you.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Adam. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.